The morning I found the $1,700 invoice from the Riverside Meadows HOA taped to my front door was the same morning I realized I'd made the best investment of my life by installing those security cameras 6 months earlier. I'm Ryan Whitmore, and I've lived in my townhouse in Boulder, Colorado for 3 years now. It's a decent place, nothing fancy, but it's mine. Well, technically the bank still owns most of it, but you know what I mean. The neighborhood is quiet, the mountains are gorgeous, and up until 6 months ago the HOA had been relatively hands-off. Then Patricia Cunningham got elected president, and suddenly every minor violation became her personal crusade. Patricia was exactly what you'd imagine when someone says, HOA Karen. Mid-50s, blonde highlights that looked like they cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and an arsenal of pastel pantsuits that she rotated through like a corporate weather vane. She drove a white Lexus SUV with a bumper sticker that said, I speak to managers professionally, which I'm pretty sure was meant to be ironic but absolutely wasn't. The invoice was printed on official HOA letterhead, complete with their little logo of a house surrounded by flowers that had always seemed cheerful, until Patricia turned it into a symbol of tyranny. The header read, Damage Assessment and Repair Cost Notice, in bold letters that seemed to scream at me through the paper. I stood there in my driveway, coffee mug in hand, reading through the itemized list. According to this document, I was responsible for significant snow damage to the common area fence that bordered my property. The damage had allegedly occurred during the major snowstorm we'd had 3 weeks ago, on January 15th. The list included replacement of 15 fence panels, labor costs, an emergency repair fee, and something called an aesthetic consistency surcharge that made absolutely no sense. The thing is, I knew for a fact that I hadn't damaged any fence. I'd been incredibly careful during that storm. I'd even spent 2 hours meticulously clearing snow away from the fence line specifically to avoid any issues, knowing how Patricia had been cracking down on property maintenance violations. I pulled out my phone and called my neighbor, Marcus Torres, who lived 2 units down. Marcus was a civil engineer and had been in the neighborhood longer than anyone else. He answered on the 3rd ring. Ryan, what's up? Did you get an invoice from the HOA about fence damage? I asked. Fence damage? No, man, why would I? Patricia just left me a bill for $1,700. Says I damaged the fence during that storm last month. Marcus was quiet for a moment. The fence between your place and the common area, that fence has been falling apart for years. The HOA was supposed to replace it last summer, but they said they didn't have the budget. Yeah, well, apparently they found the budget and they want me to pay for it. That's insane. You didn't hit it with your car or anything, did you? No, I was home the whole time during the storm. I didn't even drive anywhere for 3 days. You should fight this. Patricia's been trying to pull this kind of thing on people. Remember when she tried to fine the Hendersons for having the wrong shade of beige on their shutters? I did remember. The Hendersons had eventually given in and repainted just to stop the harassment, even though their shutters had been the same color for 8 years before Patricia showed up. I'm not paying this, I said. No way. Good. Let me know if you need any help. I've got some contacts if you need to get legal advice. After hanging up with Marcus, I went inside and immediately pulled up the footage from my security cameras. I'd installed a comprehensive system after someone had broken into cars in the neighborhood last summer. 4 cameras covered every angle of my property: front door, driveway, backyard, and the side yard where the disputed fence was located. I scrolled back to January 15th and started watching. The snow had started falling around 6 in the morning. By noon, We'd already accumulated 8 inches, and it didn't stop until almost midnight. I watched myself come out around 2 in the afternoon, bundled up like I was heading to the Arctic, and spend the next 2 hours clearing snow. The footage showed me carefully shoveling away from the fence, creating a clear buffer zone. Then, at approximately 8:30 that evening, something interesting happened. A large pickup truck appeared in the frame, driving through the common area behind my property. The truck was moving too fast for the conditions and sliding on the ice. I watched as it fishtailed, overcorrected, and slammed directly into the fence. The impact was brutal. Fence panels exploded outward, some landing in my yard. The truck didn't stop. It just kept going, disappearing from view. I sat back in my chair, a smile spreading across my face. I had the whole thing on camera. Crystal clear footage showing that not only did I not damage the fence, but I could see exactly what did damage it. I checked the timestamp carefully. January 15th at 8:32 p.m. I saved the footage to 3 different locations, including cloud storage, and then I started examining the truck more carefully. The lighting wasn't perfect, but my cameras were pretty good quality. I could make out that it was a dark-colored Ram pickup, probably black or dark blue, with some kind of decal on the rear window. I enhanced the image as much as I could and realized the decal looked like one of those family stick figure collections. But here's where it got really interesting. As I was reviewing the footage from multiple angles, I noticed something else. The next morning, January 16th, another vehicle showed up in the common area. This one I recognized immediately, Patricia's white Lexus SUV. She got out, surveyed the damage to the fence, took several photos with her phone, and then walked directly to my property line. She stood there for at least 5 minutes, looking at my house, the fence, and back at her phone. She made a call. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see her gesturing emphatically at the damage. Then she got back in her car and left. 2 days later, January 18th, a repair crew showed up. They replaced the damaged section of fence quickly and efficiently. I'd actually seen them working and hadn't thought much of it at the time, assuming the HOA was just doing maintenance. I'd even waved at one of the workers. Now, on February 3rd, I was holding an invoice demanding that I pay for those repairs based on damage I supposedly caused. Patricia had waited over 2 weeks after the repairs were complete to send me this bill. That seemed calculated. I needed to understand the game she was playing before I made my move. I spent the next hour reviewing every piece of HOA documentation I had. The CC and Rs, the bylaws, the architectural guidelines, everything. I found the section about property damage and liability. It stated clearly that property owners were responsible for damage they caused to common areas. But it also stated that the HOA was required to provide evidence of the damage and the cause before assessing costs to individual owners. There was also a clause about the appeals process. Any owner who disputed a fine or assessment had the right to request a hearing before the HOA board within 30 days of receiving notice. The board was required to review all evidence from both parties before making a final decision. Perfect. I drafted a formal letter disputing the charge and requesting a hearing. I kept it professional and factual. I didn't mention the video footage yet. I wanted to see what Patricia would do first, how far she was willing to take this lie. I printed the letter, signed it, and walked it directly to Patricia's house. She lived in one of the larger single-family homes on the north side of the development, a massive brick colonial with professionally landscaped gardens that looked like they required a full-time staff to maintain. I rang the doorbell and waited. Patricia answered after a moment, wearing cream-colored slacks and a lavender cardigan that probably cost more than my car payment. Her expression when she saw me was carefully neutral, but I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Anticipation, maybe. "Ryan," she said, her voice dripping with false pleasantness. "What can I do for you? I'm here to deliver my formal dispute of the assessment you left on my door this morning." I handed her the letter. She took it without looking at it. "The assessment for the fence damage you caused." "Alleged fence damage. I didn't damage any fence, Patricia. The damage occurred on your property line during a period when you were home and operating snow removal equipment. The evidence is clear." "What evidence? You haven't provided any evidence." She smiled, and it was the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse before pouncing. "The timing, the location, and the pattern of damage all indicate impact from a snow blower or similar equipment. Your property was the only one with that type of activity during the storm." "I used a shovel, Patricia. A manual shovel, and I was extremely careful around the fence." "Well, that's your claim. The board will review your dispute at our next meeting. You'll receive notice of the date and time. I'm requesting a hearing where I can present my evidence." "That's your right under the bylaws." "We'll schedule something." She started to close the door. "One more thing," I said. "Who was driving the dark Ram pickup that uses the common area access road?" Her hand froze on the door. "Just for a second, but I saw it." "I have no idea what you're talking about." "The night of the storm." "Dark pickup truck, family decal in the back window. Drives through the common area pretty regularly. You must know whose it is since you're so involved in neighborhood activities." "We have many residents and their guests use the common area roads. I don't track every vehicle." Her voice had gotten tighter. "Interesting. Well, I'm sure it'll come up during the hearing. Have a good day, Patricia." I walked away before she could respond. I could feel her watching me all the way back to my street. I'd rattled her, which was exactly what I wanted. Now she knew I had information, but she didn't know how much. Let her sweat. Over the next few days, I did some detective work of my own. I started paying attention to vehicles in the neighborhood, particularly looking for that Ram pickup. Boulder's not a huge city, but our HOA had over 200 homes. Finding one specific truck would take time and luck. The luck came through on the fourth day. I was getting groceries at the King Soopers on Arapahoe Avenue when I saw it in the parking lot. Dark blue Ram 1500, family stick figure decal in the back window. Colorado plates. I casually walked past it, noting the license plate number in my phone, and then positioned myself where I could see who would come back to it. 20 minutes later, a man in his early 40s came out with a cart full of groceries. He was tall, wearing a Broncos jersey and jeans. He loaded up the truck and drove off. I didn't recognize him as someone from the neighborhood, but that didn't mean much. I didn't know everyone who lived in Riverside Meadows. When I got home, I did what any reasonable person in the 21st century would do. I went full internet detective. I couldn't exactly run license plates myself, but I posted in a local neighborhood Facebook group asking if anyone knew the owner of a dark blue Ram 1500, saying I'd seen it driving erratically near the school zone and was concerned about safety. It was a slight stretch of the truth, but not entirely inaccurate. Within 2 hours, I had my answer. A woman named Jennifer Morrison responded saying that sounded like her brother-in-law's truck. His name was Derek Cunningham. He lived over on Maple Ridge Drive, about 4 streets from me. Cunningham. I pulled up the HOA directory on my phone and searched. Sure enough, Derek and Stephanie Cunningham, 2847 Maple Ridge Drive. And then I searched for Patricia's address. Patricia Cunningham, 1523 Elderberry Court. I called Marcus immediately. Is Patricia married? I asked as soon as he picked up. Patricia, no, she's been divorced for years. Why? Does she have any family in the neighborhood? I think her son lives here somewhere. Why? What did you find? Her son is Derek Cunningham. And Derek Cunningham drives a dark blue Ram 1500 that crashed into that fence the night of the storm. Marcus let out a low whistle. Oh man, so she's trying to cover for her son by blaming you. Exactly, and charging me $1,700 to do it. That's fraud, Ryan. That's actual fraud. I know. I've got the whole thing on video, him hitting the fence, her showing up the next morning and clearly deciding to pin it on me. What are you going to do? For now, I'm going to wait for this hearing she's scheduling and let her bury herself. The deeper she digs, the worse it gets for her. Just be careful. People like Patricia don't like being cornered. They get dangerous. Marcus was right, but I was tired of people like Patricia getting away with abusing whatever small amount of power they managed to grab. Someone needed to stand up to her, and apparently, that someone was going to be me. The notice for the HOA board hearing arrived in my mailbox 5 days later. The meeting was scheduled for February 18th at 7 p.m. in the community clubhouse. I had 2 weeks to prepare. I spent those 2 weeks getting everything in order. I consulted with a lawyer friend of mine, David Chen, who specialized in property law. He reviewed all my documentation and the video footage. This is pretty cut and dry, David said, sitting in my living room with his laptop open. You've got clear video evidence that you didn't cause the damage and that someone else did. Plus, you've got evidence suggesting the HOA president knew who caused the damage and chose to blame you instead. That's fraud, possibly conspiracy to commit fraud. What should I do? Go to the hearing. Present your evidence professionally and factually. Give them a chance to drop the assessment and apologize. If they double down, then you've got grounds for a lawsuit, and honestly, you'd probably win. You might even have a case for harassment and abuse of authority. I don't really want to sue anyone. I just want them to leave me alone and stop trying to steal $1,700 from me. David shrugged. Then hopefully the video will be enough to scare them straight. But Ryan, people who do stuff like this, they're usually not doing it for the first time. Patricia's probably tried this on other people. You might be doing the whole neighborhood a favor by standing up to her. He was right, and I knew it. I thought about the Hendersons and their shutters. How many other people had Patricia bullied into paying for things they didn't owe or fixing things that weren't broken? The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept running through scenarios in my head, imagining how it would go. I transferred the video footage to a USB drive and made sure I could play it on my laptop. I'd printed out stills from the video showing the truck hitting the fence, including one clear shot of the license plate. I had timestamps, weather reports from that night, and a written statement detailing everything I'd observed. I was ready, but I was also nervous. Confrontation isn't really my thing. I'm a software developer. I spend most of my time with computers, not people. The idea of standing up in front of the HOA board and essentially accusing their president of fraud made my stomach churn. But then, I'd think about that $1,700 invoice and get angry all over again. That was nearly 2 months of my grocery budget. That was the new tires I needed for my car. That was money I'd worked hard for, and Patricia thought she could just take it based on a lie. February 18th arrived with clear skies and temperatures in the mid-40s, warm for Boulder in the middle of winter. I dressed carefully, business casual, wanting to look professional without seeming like I was trying too hard. I loaded up my laptop bag with all my evidence and headed to the clubhouse at 6:45. The clubhouse was a medium-sized building near the neighborhood entrance with a meeting room, a small gym, and a kitchen area. The meeting room had a long table at the front where the board members sat and rows of chairs for residents. When I arrived, about 15 other people were already there, most of them sitting in the audience section. The board table had 5 chairs. Patricia sat in the center, looking confident in a navy blazer and white blouse. To her left was Martin Sheffield, an older retired accountant who served as treasurer. To her right was Deanne Foster, the secretary, a mousy woman in her 60s who always seemed nervous around Patricia. The other 2 board members were Robert Kane and Susan Mitchell, both of whom I'd never actually spoken to. Patricia saw me come in, and her expression hardened just slightly before smoothing back into professional neutrality. I took a seat in the front row, setting my laptop bag beside me. At exactly 7 p.m., Patricia called the meeting to order. They went through standard business first, approving minutes from the last meeting, discussing the budget and addressing a few minor maintenance issues. I sat there trying to keep my nerves under control while they droned on about landscaping contracts and pool repairs for the summer season. Finally, at 7:35, Patricia cleared her throat. Next on our agenda, we have an appeal hearing. Ryan Whitmore has disputed an assessment for damage to common area property. Ryan, would you like to present your case? I stood up, my heart pounding. Yes, thank you. I moved to a small podium that had been set up to the side of the room. On February 3rd, I received an invoice for $1,700 claiming that I caused damage to the fence bordering my property during the snowstorm on January 15th. I'm here tonight to dispute that assessment because I did not cause any damage to that fence. Patricia leaned forward. Mr. Whitmore, the damage occurred on your property line during a period when you were actively clearing snow. The timing and location make it clear that your activities caused the damage. Actually, Patricia, that's not what happened at all. I was clearing snow, yes, but I was extremely careful around the fence. I used a manual shovel and I specifically created a buffer zone to avoid any contact with the fence. That's your claim, but without evidence. It's simply your word against the documented damage. I smiled. This was it. Actually, I do have evidence, comprehensive evidence. I pulled out my laptop and set it on the podium. I have a full security camera system covering my property, including the side yard where the fence is located. I have footage from the entire day of January 15th. The room got very quiet. Patricia's face remained neutral, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her pen. Security footage. Yes, high-definition, time-stamped footage from multiple angles. I opened my laptop and pulled up the video file. With the board's permission, I'd like to show this footage now. Martin Sheffield spoke up. I think that would be appropriate. If you have evidence that clears you, we should see it. I connected my laptop to the TV screen mounted on the wall, which the clubhouse used for presentations. The large screen flickered to life, showing the frozen frame from my security camera dated January 15th at 6 a.m. This is the view from my side yard camera, I explained. I'm going to fast forward through the day to show the relevant portions. I showed them footage of me coming out around 2 p.m. and carefully clearing snow, making sure to highlight how I was shoveling away from the fence, not toward it. Then I skipped ahead to 8:30 p.m. This is when the actual damage occurred, I said, and pressed play at normal speed. The room watched in silence as the dark blue Ram 1500 came sliding into frame, fishtailed on the ice, and crashed directly into the fence with an impact that made several people in the audience gasp. The truck didn't slow down, just kept going out of frame, leaving destroyed fence panels scattered behind it. As you can see, I continued, I had nothing to do with the damage to that fence. It was caused by a vehicle losing control in the icy conditions and crashing into it. Patricia had gone very pale. We had no way of knowing that. The damage appeared to be from snow-clearing equipment. "There's more," I said, pulling up the footage from January 16th. "The next morning, you personally came to survey the damage." The screen showed Patricia's white Lexus pulling up, Patricia getting out, examining the fence, taking photos, and then standing at my property line while making a phone call. "You clearly saw the nature of the damage. Impact damage from a vehicle, not scraping from a shovel or snow blower. And yet, 2 weeks later, after the fence was repaired, you sent me a bill claiming I was responsible." Diane Foster raised her hand timidly. "Patricia, did you know about the vehicle impact when you assessed Mr. Whitmore?" "The damage could have been from multiple incidents," Patricia stammered. "The vehicle might have hit already weakened sections that Mr. Whitmore's activities had compromised." "That fence was perfectly intact before the truck hit it," I said firmly. "And there's one more thing the board should know." I pulled up the enhanced image of the truck's license plate. I was able to identify the vehicle. It's a dark blue Ram 1500, Colorado plates. I read out the plate number. "That truck is registered to Derek Cunningham of 2847 Maple Ridge Drive." Martin Sheffield pulled out his phone and started typing. "Derek Cunningham. That's your son, isn't it, Patricia?" The room erupted. Patricia shot to her feet. "That's irrelevant. Even if my son's vehicle was involved, that doesn't change the fact that the fence needed repairs and someone needed to pay for it." "But you specifically billed me," I said, my voice rising. "You knew your son caused the damage and you decided to blame me for it. That's fraud, Patricia." Robert Kane, who'd been silent until now, spoke up in a deep, authoritative voice. "This is extremely serious. Patricia, did you knowingly file a false damage claim against Mr. Whitmore?" "I did not file a false claim. I assessed the damage as president of this HOA and made a determination based on the available evidence." "But you knew about the truck," Deanne said softly. "We can see you on the video, looking at the damage. Impact damage looks very different from scraping damage. Anyone could see that." "I want to know why the HOA is covering repairs for damage caused by a resident's personal vehicle in the first place," Susan Mitchell added. "If Derek Cunningham damaged common area property with his truck, he should be billed directly, not the HOA." Patricia was trapped and she knew it. She looked around the table at her fellow board members, all of whom were now looking at her with varying degrees of suspicion and disapproval. "This is ridiculous. The fence needed repairs. We made repairs, and we assessed the cost according to our best judgment." "Your best judgment was to blame an innocent party for damage caused by your family member," Martin said, his voice cold. "That's not judgment, Patricia. That's corruption." "I move that we immediately void the assessment against Mr. Whitmore," Robert said. "All in favor?" 4 hands went up. Patricia sat with her arms crossed, glaring at everyone. The motion passed 4-1. "Furthermore," Martin continued, "I move that we open an investigation into President Cunningham's conduct and any other assessments or fines she's issued since taking office. There may be other residents who have been unfairly charged." "Second," Susan said immediately. Another vote. 4-1 again. Patricia's face was bright red now. "You can't do this. I'm the president of this board." "A president who's been abusing her authority," Robert said. "And honestly, Patricia, you should resign before this gets worse. Mr. Whitmore would be well within his rights to press charges for fraud and harassment." All eyes turned to me. I hadn't really thought about pressing charges. I just wanted the unfair bill to go away. But standing there, looking at Patricia's defiant face, I thought about what David had said. This probably wasn't the first time she'd done something like this. I want a formal apology, I said. In writing, sent to me and posted in the community newsletter. And I want the HOA to bill Derek Cunningham for the actual cost of the fence repairs. He caused the damage, he should pay for it. Done, Martin said. Patricia, I assume you can draft that apology tonight. Patricia looked like she wanted to explode. Fine, but I'm not resigning. You want me off this board, you'll have to vote me out. That can be arranged, Susan said coolly. The bylaws allow for a special election if 20% of homeowners petition for one. I don't think that's going to be hard to organize after this. The meeting concluded shortly after that, with the board voting to adjourn. People came up to me afterward, shaking my hand, thanking me for standing up to Patricia. Marcus was there too, grinning. Man, that was incredible, he said. Did you see her face when you showed that video? I thought she was going to have a stroke, I admitted. I've never done anything like that before. My hands are still shaking. You did great. And you probably just saved a bunch of other people from her schemes. As people were filing out, Martin Sheffield approached me. Mr. Whitmore, I want to apologize on behalf of the board. We should have been more vigilant about Patricia's activities. We're going to do a full audit of every fine and assessment issued in the past 6 months. I appreciate that. I just hope Derek actually pays for the fence. Oh, he will. I'll be sending that bill personally, and if he doesn't pay, we'll put a lien on his property. That's how it should have been handled from the start. I packed up my laptop and headed out into the cold February night feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The relief was enormous. No $1,700 bill hanging over my head, no fraudulent charges on my record, and Patricia thoroughly exposed. But it wasn't over yet. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Ryan Whitmore? A gruff male voice asked. Yes, who's this? Derek Cunningham. We need to talk. My stomach tightened. About what? About you sending the HOA after me for that fence. That bill was supposed to be yours, not mine. That bill was never supposed to be mine. You crashed into the fence with your truck. I have video proof. That was an accident. It was icy. I lost control. These things happen. Yes, they do. And when they do, the person who caused the damage pays for the repairs. That's how responsibility works. You didn't have to show that video. You could have just paid the bill and moved on. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You wanted me to pay $1,700 for damage you caused. My mom was trying to help me out. I'm having some financial problems right now. That fence repair cost would have really hurt. So you decided it should hurt me instead. I didn't crash into any fence, Derek. You did. I'm not paying for your mistake. This is going to cause huge problems for my mom. The HOA is talking about removing her from the board. Your mom caused huge problems for your mom when she committed fraud trying to protect you. Don't call me again. I hung up before he could respond. I was shaking, but it was from anger now, not nerves. The entitlement was staggering. Derek had damaged property. His mother had tried to cover it up and blame me, and somehow in their minds, I was the bad guy for not going along with it. Over the next week, things got interesting in the neighborhood. The promised investigation into Patricia's conduct turned up 3 other cases where she'd issued questionable fines or assessments. The Hendersons and their shutters were one. Another involved a single mother named Katie Brennan, who'd been fined repeatedly for leaving her trash, cans visible from the street, even though she'd always brought them in within the allowed time frame. The third was an elderly couple, the Washingtons, who'd been assessed emergency landscaping fees after Patricia claimed their bushes were overgrown and posed a visibility hazard, even though the bushes were well trimmed and no traffic studies supported her claim. All three families had simply paid rather than fight, not realizing they had grounds to dispute. Katie told me later that she'd been afraid if she fought back, Patricia would find other ways to make her life miserable. The Washingtons had actually considered selling their home just to get away from the harassment. Martin Sheffield organized a petition for a special election, and within 4 days, he had signatures from over 40% of the homeowners. The special election was scheduled for March 15th. Patricia could have resigned gracefully, but true to form, she refused. She even campaigned, sending out letters defending her actions and claiming I'd manipulated the board with deceptively edited video footage. That backside fired spectacularly when I offered to give copies of the complete, unedited footage to any resident who wanted to see it. 20 people took me up on it. The narrative Patricia was trying to spin fell apart completely. Meanwhile, Derek still hadn't paid his bill. The HOA sent him 3 notices. He ignored all of them. By early March, Martin filed the paperwork to place a lien on Derek's property for the unpaid common area damage assessment. 2 days before the special election, I got another visitor. This time it was Patricia herself, standing on my doorstep at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday night. "Ryan, we need to talk," she said. She looked terrible, tired, and stressed in a way I'd never seen before. "I don't think we have anything to talk about, Patricia. Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. I wasn't letting her inside my house. "What do you want?" "I want you to tell the neighborhood you made a mistake, that you misunderstood the situation." I stared at her. "Are you serious?" "This election is going to ruin me. People are treating me like a criminal over a simple misunderstanding about fence repairs." "It wasn't a misunderstanding. You deliberately tried to make me pay for damage your son caused. That's fraud." "I was trying to protect my family." "By destroying me financially." "Patricia, $1,700 is a lot of money. You know that. You chose to try to take it from me rather than have your son face the consequences of his actions." She was quiet for a moment, and I thought maybe, finally, she was going to actually acknowledge what she'd done. But then she said, "If you don't help me, I'll make sure you regret it. I still have friends in this neighborhood." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." "You think you've won, but this isn't over." "Actually, it is over. The assessment was voided, you're getting voted out, and your son is getting a lien on his property. It's completely over and you lost. Go home, Patricia." I went back inside and locked the door. Through the window, I watched her stand on my porch for another minute before finally walking back to her car. My hands were shaking again. I'd been threatened before in online forums and comments sections, the usual internet garbage. But having someone threaten me to my face, in person at my own home, was different. It was real and scary in a way digital threats never were. I called David Chen the next morning and told him what had happened. "That's attempted intimidation," David said. "You should file a police report." "I don't know if I want to escalate things that far." "Ryan, she came to your house at night and threatened you. That's already escalated. You need to document this in case she tries something else." He was right. I drove to the Boulder Police Department and filed a report. The officer who took my statement was professional and thorough. I explained the whole situation, the fraudulent assessment, the confrontation at the HOA meeting, and Patricia's visit. He wrote it all down and gave me a case number. "Probably nothing will come of this immediately," he said. "But if she does anything else, having this prior report on file will help establish a pattern of behavior." The special election happened on March 15th. The turnout was massive, almost 70% of homeowners voting either in person or by proxy. Patricia lost by a landslide. She received only 18 votes out of over 300 cast. Martin Sheffield was elected as the new president, with Susan Mitchell as vice president. I thought that would be the end of it. Patricia would fade into the background. Derek would eventually pay his lien or face legal consequences, and life in Riverside Meadows would return to normal. I was wrong. On March 22nd, 1 week after the election, I woke up to find all 4 of my tires slashed. Not just flat, completely destroyed, with long cuts that made them irreparable. The damage had been done sometime during the night. My security cameras had been spray painted over with black paint, blocking their view. I called the police immediately. The same officer from my previous report came out to investigate. He walked around my car, examined the cameras, and took photos of everything. "This is obviously retaliation," he said. "Do you have any proof of who did it?" "No. They disabled my cameras first. But given the timing and the previous threats, it's pretty obvious who's responsible." Obvious isn't the same as provable. Does anyone else on your street have security cameras that might have caught something? Marcus did. His camera covered his own driveway but also captured part of the street. The officer went to talk to him while I stood there looking at my destroyed tires, feeling violated and angry. Marcus came out a few minutes later with the officer. "I've got something," he said. "My camera caught a vehicle driving by slowly around 3 a.m. It stopped in front of your place for about 10 minutes, then left." "Can you see the vehicle clearly?" the officer asked. "Pretty clearly. It's a white Lexus SUV." My heart started pounding. Patricia drives a white Lexus SUV. The officer took a copy of Marcus's footage and added it to the case file. "I'm going to need to talk to Miss Cunningham. Do you have her address?" I gave him Patricia's address, and he headed over there while I called my insurance company and a tow truck. The tires were going to cost me at least $800 even with insurance coverage. I was furious. 2 hours later, the officer came back. "I spoke with Patricia Cunningham. She denies being anywhere near your property last night. She says her vehicle was parked in her garage all night and she was home alone." "So what happens now?" "The video from your neighbor's camera shows a vehicle matching hers in the area at the time of the vandalism. That's enough for me to include her as a suspect in my report. However, without a clear view of the license plate or the driver, it's not enough to make an arrest. I'm going to recommend that the detective division follow up on this." It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was something. The officer gave me another case number and told me to call him if anything else happened. By afternoon, I had 4 new tires and restored security camera footage, though the cameras themselves would need to be cleaned properly. The whole incident had cost me the better part of a day and $800 that I shouldn't have had to spend. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about the vandalism. I got calls and texts from at least a dozen people expressing support and outrage. Martin Sheffield came by in person. "This is completely unacceptable," he said. "The board is going to send Patricia a cease and desist letter. If she's behind this, she needs to know there will be serious consequences." "I appreciate that, but I'm not sure a letter from the HOA is going to stop her if she's willing to commit vandalism and property destruction." "You're probably right. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. Wait for the police investigation, I guess. Make sure my cameras are working properly. Maybe install more cameras." That night, I did exactly that. I bought 2 additional cameras with better night vision and vandal-resistant housings, and I positioned them to cover angles the original cameras missed. I also made sure all my footage was being backed up to cloud storage in real time, so even if someone destroyed the cameras, the video would be preserved. 3 days later, I got a call from a Detective Sarah Brennan with the Boulder Police Department. She wanted to meet with me to discuss the case. We met at a coffee shop near downtown Boulder. Detective Brennan was in her 40s, professional and direct. She reviewed all the evidence with me. The original fraud attempt with the fence, Patricia's threat at my door, the slashed tires, and Marcus's video footage. The problem we have, she explained, is that each incident individually is relatively minor. The fence assessment was handled internally by your HOA and resolved without financial loss to you. The verbal threat wasn't recorded and could be characterized as a misunderstanding. The vandalism is more serious, but we can't definitively prove who did it. But the pattern is clear, I argued. Patricia commits fraud, gets caught, threatens me, loses her election, and then my property gets destroyed. I agree the pattern is clear, but patterns aren't convictions. I need hard evidence. A clear video of her slashing your tires, or a witness who saw her do it, or physical evidence like spray paint cans in her possession that match the paint on your cameras. So she just gets away with it. I didn't say that. I'm going to keep investigating. I'm going to interview her formally, put some pressure on her. Sometimes that's enough to either get a confession or scare someone into stopping. But I need you to be prepared for the possibility that we won't be able to charge her criminally. It was frustrating, but I understood. The justice system needed proof, not just logical inference. I thanked Detective Brennan and told her I'd cooperate fully with whatever she needed. Over the next 2 weeks, things were quiet. Too quiet. I was constantly on edge, checking my cameras multiple times a day, watching for any sign of Patricia or suspicious activity. Every time I left my house, I did a full inspection of my property looking for damage or tampering. The HOA audit results came back in early April. Martin presented them at a community meeting. In addition to the 3 cases we already knew about, the investigation had turned up 5 more instances of questionable fines or assessments during Patricia's tenure as president. In total, she'd inappropriately collected over $6,000 from residents for bogus violations or inflated repair costs. The board voted to refund every penny to the affected homeowners. They also voted to ban Patricia from ever serving on the HOA board again, and to pursue legal action if she didn't voluntarily repay her portion of the misappropriated funds. I wasn't at that meeting, but Marcus filled me in afterward. He said Patricia had shown up and caused a scene, yelling about persecution and witch hunts before storming out. Several residents had actually applauded when she left. Then, on April 10th, things came to a head. I woke up at 2:30 a.m. to the sound of breaking glass. I shot out of bed, heart racing, and grabbed my phone. My security camera app was already sending me alerts. Someone was breaking my back window. I pulled up the live feed and saw a figure in dark clothing using a tire iron to smash the glass sliding door that led to my small patio. They were working fast, methodically breaking through the glass. I called 911 while running downstairs. Someone's breaking into my house right now. I have them on camera. Are you in the house, sir? The dispatcher asked. Yes, I'm upstairs. They're breaking in through the back. Stay where you are and stay on the line. Officers are on the way. I could hear the glass shattering downstairs. Then I heard footsteps in my house. Someone was inside. I locked my bedroom door and pushed my dresser in front of it, phone still pressed to my ear. They're inside, I whispered to the dispatcher. I'm barricaded in my bedroom. Officers are 2 minutes away. Stay quiet and stay hidden. Those 2 minutes felt like hours. I could hear movement downstairs, things being knocked over. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. They were coming up. I grabbed a baseball bat from my closet, my only weapon. The footsteps stopped outside my door. The handle turned, but the door was locked. Then whoever it was started kicking the door. Boom, boom, boom. The door shuddered with each impact. The dresser I'd pushed in front of it started to slide. Then I heard the most beautiful sound in the world, sirens. Multiple sirens getting closer. The kicking stopped. I heard the footsteps running back down the stairs. "Police are here," the dispatcher said. "Stay where you are until an officer comes to get you." I heard shouting from outside and downstairs. Multiple voices yelling, "Police, don't move." Then there were heavy footsteps coming up my stairs again, but these were different. Authoritative, controlled. "Boulder Police, anyone up here? I'm in the bedroom, the homeowner." I pushed furniture in front of the door. "Stay there. We're going to secure the house first." 5 minutes later, an officer knocked on my door and identified himself. I moved the dresser and opened the door to find 3 police officers standing there in full gear. "The suspect is in custody," one of them told me. "We caught her trying to climb out the back window. Are you injured?" "No, I'm okay. Who was it?" But I already knew. Even before the officer said her name, I knew. Patricia Cunningham, 54 years old, lives about 6 blocks from here. "Do you know her?" "She's the former president of our HOA. She's the one I filed reports about." "We know. Detective Brennan is on her way. She's going to want to talk to you." I went downstairs to survey the damage. The sliding glass door was completely destroyed. Glass was everywhere. My living room was trashed, with furniture knocked over and papers scattered. Patricia had clearly been looking for something, maybe the video evidence from the fence incident. Detective Brennan arrived 20 minutes later. She found me sitting on my couch in the middle of the chaos, still holding my baseball bat. "You okay?" she asked, sitting down beside me. "Yeah. Scared, but okay. Did you talk to her?" "Briefly. She's not saying much, asking for a lawyer, but we've got her dead to rights on this one." Breaking and entering, criminal mischief, attempted assault. The cameras you installed after the tire slashing caught everything in high definition. We can see her face clearly. Why would she do this? It doesn't make any sense. She's destroyed her whole life over a fence. It's not really about the fence anymore. It's about ego and control. You embarrassed her publicly, got her removed from a position of power. Some people can't handle that. They escalate, trying to regain control, and they keep escalating until they end up doing something like this. What happens now? She'll be charged with multiple felonies. Given the prior reports and the pattern of behavior, she's looking at serious prison time if convicted. This isn't going to go away with a fine and probation. Detective Brennan helped me document everything for the insurance claim and the criminal case. By the time the sun came up, my house was a crime scene filled with evidence markers and fingerprint dust. I couldn't stay there until the glass was replaced and the house was secured, so Marcus offered to let me crash at his place for a couple of days. News of Patricia's arrest spread through Riverside Meadows like wildfire. My phone didn't stop ringing for 3 days. Everyone wanted to know what had happened and if I was okay. The general sentiment was shock mixed with a sense that maybe they should have seen it coming. Patricia had always been intense, always been controlling. The leap to criminal behavior seemed